The cafeteria buzzed with the usual lunchtime chaos. Forks clinking, trays slamming, voices overlapping in a hum of routine. In the corner, Amara sat alone, her small metal lunchbox open in front of her. The aroma of her mother's jollof rice, spiced with cloves and bay leaves, wafted upward, a quiet comfort in the sterile fluorescent light. She scooped a bite, her lips curling into a faint smile, savoring the taste of home. Then it started, a snicker from the table across the room. "What's that smell?" a voice sneered, sharp enough to cut through the noise. Heads turned. A woman in a crisp blazer pointed at Amara's lunchbox, her laughter joined by others. "You bring that from the jungle or something?" The words landed like a slap. Amara's hand froze mid-bite, her cheeks burning. The room seemed to shrink, every eye on her, every chuckle a needle. She wanted to shrink too, to disappear into the linoleum floor. But something flickered in her chest, not shame, but defiance. She closed her lunchbox, stood, and walked out, her steps steady despite the trembling in her knees. Outside, in the cold air of the office parking lot, she leaned against the wall and whispered to herself, "One day, you'll all eat my food, and you'll cry for it." That promise, born in the sting of their laughter, wasn't just a vow. It was the spark of a dream that would change everything. Amara wasn't just a data entry clerk with a worn lunchbox. She was a woman who carried her grandmother's recipes in her bones, recipes that had fed generations through joy and sorrow. Back home that night, she pulled out her mother's old notebook, its pages yellowed and smudged with palm oil stains. Each recipe was a story, a goosey soup from her aunt's wedding, pepper stew from the night her brother was born. The cafeteria's cruelty replayed in her mind, but so did her mother's voice. "Your food is your heart, Amara. Never let anyone make you hide it." She traced the handwritten lines, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to let their mockery define her. She'd show them what her food, what she was worth. By midnight, her tiny apartment kitchen was alive with the clatter of pots and the sizzle of onions. She cooked until dawn, perfecting a dish she'd serve to the world. The next day, she didn't bring her lunchbox to work. Instead, she carried a plan. She'd save every penny, take every extra shift, and turn her recipes into a restaurant that would make the whole city take notice. The laughter in the cafeteria wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and Amara was ready to make them eat their words. The sting of mockery. Amara's days at Pinnacle Analytics were a grind of spreadsheets and coffee runs, her desk tucked in a corner where the air conditioning never quite reached. She was invisible to most of her colleagues, just another face in the great cubicle maze. Her only solace was lunch, when she'd open her battered lunchbox and breathe in the warmth of her Nigerian heritage. Jollof rice, plantain, or pounded yam, each bite a tether to her family's love. But that day, the cafeteria turned her sanctuary into a battlefield. The mockery wasn't new. She'd heard whispers about her weird food before, but this time it was louder, sharper. Jessica, the team lead with a knack for cutting remarks, led the charge. "Amara, do you cook that in a cauldron?" she'd said, her friends laughing like it was a comedy show. Amara's throat tightened, but she didn't respond. She packed her lunch and left, their giggles echoing behind her. At home, her mother, Aisha, noticed the slump in her shoulders. "They don't know what they're missing," Aisha said, stirring a pot of stew. "Your food carries our history." Amara nodded, but the hurt lingered. She lay awake that night, replaying the scene, her anger turning into determination. She'd make them see her, not as a punchline, but as a force. Quiet resilience. Amara didn't stop bringing her lunch, but she ate in the break room now, away from the cafeteria's judgmental eyes. Each dish was a quiet act of defiance, a reminder of who she was. Her coworker, Priya, a soft-spoken graphic designer, noticed. "Your food smells amazing," Priya said one day, peering at Amara's agouti stew. "Can I try some?" Amara hesitated, then slid her lunchbox over. Priya's eyes lit up at the first bite. "This is incredible. Why don't you sell this?" The words planted a seed. Amara started cooking more at home, experimenting with her grandmother's recipes, tweaking spices to perfect the flavors. She saved every dollar from her paycheck, skipping coffee runs and new clothes. Her mother helped, teaching her old tricks, how to balance heat in pepper soup, how to make fufu silky smooth. Late nights in her cramped kitchen became her refuge, the clink of spoons and the hum of the stove drowning out the cafeteria's laughter. Priya became her cheerleader, sneaking bites during lunch breaks and spreading the word among a few trusted colleagues. "You're sitting on a gold mine," Priya said. Amara smiled, but doubt gnawed at her. Could she really turn her food into a business? The idea felt like a dream too big for her small life. One rainy afternoon, a stranger changed everything. Amara had brought a tray of chin-chin, her grandmother's sweet, crunchy snack, to a company potluck, expecting it to be ignored. But a client visiting the office, Mr. Okoye, took one bite and froze. "Who made this?" he asked, his voice thick with nostalgia. Amara, flustered, admitted it was hers. Okoye, a restaurateur from Lagos, spent the next hour talking to her about food, family, and dreams. "You have a gift," he said, handing her his card. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She saw vision, a small restaurant with warm lights, wooden tables, and the smell of her mother's stew filling the air. She called Okoye the next day, her voice shaking. He offered to mentor her, sharing tips on sourcing ingredients and navigating permits. Amara took a second job, cleaning offices at night, saving every cent for her dream. She sketched menus on napkins, named her future restaurant Aisha's Table after her mother, and poured her heart into every plan. The cafeteria's laughter faded, replaced by a fire she couldn't ignore. She was going to make it happen no matter what. Overcoming obstacles. The path to opening Aisha's Table was brutal. Amara's savings were barely enough for a deposit on a rundown storefront in Brooklyn. The bank laughed at her loan application, citing her lack of business experience. "You're a clerk, not a chef," one loan officer said, echoing the cafeteria's cruelty. Suppliers were skeptical, offering high prices for spices she needed in bulk. Her landlord raised her apartment rent, forcing her to dip into her restaurant fund. Yet Amara pushed forward. She found a small business grant for minority women, spending nights perfecting her application. Priya helped with a logo, and Okoye connected her to a supplier who gave her a discount. The storefront needed work, leaky pipes, cracked walls, but Amara and her mother painted it themselves, their hands stained with turmeric and hope. Some nights, exhaustion made her question everything. "What if I fail, Ma?" she asked, stirring stew in their tiny kitchen. Aisha squeezed her hand. "Failure's just a detour, not a dead end." Amara clung to those words, working through setbacks. By the time she signed the lease, her hands shook not with fear, but with purpose. She was building something no one could laugh at. The grand opening. Aisha's Table opened on a chilly Saturday, its windows glowing with string lights Amara had hung herself. The menu was simple but soulful. Jollof rice, agouti stew, puff-puff, each dish a love letter to her heritage. Word had spread through Priya's social media posts and Okoye's network, drawing a small but curious crowd. Amara stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her heart pounding. Customers raved, their plates cleaned in minutes. A food blogger posted a photo of her pepper stew, calling it a revelation. By evening, the line stretched down the block. Amara barely slept, cooking through the night to keep up. Local papers picked up the story. Data clerk turns recipes into Brooklyn's hottest spot.
Strangers shared stories of their own family's dishes, connecting with Amara's food on a level she hadn't expected. But the real test loomed. Priya whispered one night, "Some of the office folks are coming tomorrow." Amara's stomach twisted. The cafeteria crowd, Jessica and her clique, would see her now, not as a joke, but as a success. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but Aisha's table was.
The return of the mockers. The next day, Jessica and 3 colleagues from Pinnacle Analytics walked into Aisha's table, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Amara recognized them instantly, their laughter from the cafeteria echoing in her memory. She took a deep breath and greeted them with a smile, serving them herself. "Try the jalo rice," she said, her voice steady. They ate in near silence, the clink of their forks loud in the packed restaurant. Jessica took a bite, then another, her eyes widening. When Amara brought out a plate of chin-chin, free for the table, Jessica hesitated, then spoke. We didn't know," her voice cracked. Another colleague, teary-eyed, said, "This tastes like my grandma's cooking." The table fell quiet, their plates empty, their faces soft with something like regret. Amara didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She saw their tears, not just for the food, but for what they'd done. As they left, Jessica slipped a note under her plate. "I'm sorry. You deserve this." Amara read it, her own eyes stinging, and tucked it away. The cafeteria's laughter was gone, replaced by something deeper, respect. A new legacy. Weeks later, Aisha's table was a neighborhood staple, its tables filled with families, students, and even food critics. Amara hired Priya to manage the social media, and her mother helped in the kitchen on weekends, her laughter filling the space. The restaurant wasn't just a business, it was a home, a place where people shared stories over steaming plates. Amara found the old lunchbox she'd once hidden, now displayed proudly on a shelf. She thought of the cafeteria, of the days she'd felt small, and realized she'd turned that pain into something beautiful. One night, Okoye visited, beaming. "You've built a legacy," he said. Amara nodded, her eyes on the bustling dining room. She'd faced mockery, doubt, and countless obstacles, but she'd also found her strength. The tears in the cafeteria weren't just regret. They were proof that her food, her heart, had changed hearts. As she locked up that night, the neon sign of Aisha's table glowed against the Brooklyn sky, a beacon of hope. Amara smiled, knowing this was only the beginning, and whispered to herself, "This is who I am."